Well, how do we find embroidery applique designs that are built in a machine? Well, every brother and baby lock machine, we get the embroidery design guide that will show all the information about the embroidery designs that are built in the machines. Most of the ones, they will actually come as a hard copy. So Solaris and Lumine, you can download this on the Brother and Baby Lock website. So I have the Lumine embroidery design guide in this one. And if I go down on the pages, well, there was first part on this one is the quick reference guide. And then towards, I start going down, we have all the embroidery stitches. And eventually we'll start getting onto the embroidery designs. I think I'm getting close in here now. So here's the first one. On the Lumine, the first design that comes out from there is this big flower. And I will show in a live video how that looks like. It is absolutely gorgeous. So that one already has some applique things. So, but let me go to another because this is kind of a bit special one. So let me go further down on this one. So all of these ones just shows the information about the design, how many colors there are, how many minutes it will take, and then also the size of the design. And the color numbers they show on this one are the brother color numbers. But if I go further down, let me go past these ones. Eventually, I will start getting on the areas that we have a lot of applique designs. Again, every machine has some. There are different ones on different machines. But this group, let me zoom in on this one. This group here has several of the applique designs. Like this love one in here. When it has this image, like a little dotted line with the scissors, that means that this one is an applique design. That's an applique placement line. And then there are some other stitches on this one. And then there's a tack down and then the decorative stitches around it. So here's one that I know is already an applique design. Here's another one. Oh, went too fast. And there's one more. And I'm going to actually demonstrate this one in the machine. So depending on how the design was digitized, some of the ones, they may have a satin stitch around it. This one has sort of a more a blanket stitch. But again, and sometimes you may have the placement line tacked down and actually the covering stitches be right next to each other. In this specific case, we have some of those other black colors done after that one. But there are multiple designs that are on each machine. Some may have more, some less. Well, here's another one. This group has some of the ones. And if I look the watermelon, there is the placement line. And then we can have the tack down. And then I have the covering stitches around it, which in this case would be the satin stitch around this melon part. So multiple ones. And then on this specific one, we have several cut files because they are in the different colors. So anyway, let me go in the machine and show you how, then what we do with this one.
I'm in here in my machine on the home page. So I will go to the embroidery. And on this first group, this is where we have lots of the built-in designs. And if I scroll on this group 5 that I showed on that quick reference guide or the embroidery design guide, and here are those designs. So I was going to use this design as an example, partly because it has way less stitches than some of these others. So when I select this one, of course, it shows me on display. And then I can, even before I set it on a screen, if I wanted to check, I can always touch the little I button there. And here it says applique material. Well, mine, I have set the machine so that it shows name of color instead of color numbers. So on the settings, if I go on my settings and where it is on the next page there, thread color. If your settings is name of color, it will just tell you on the words. But if I put it in here in a color number and the brother colors, that is how the default is in a machine. Then you may not see the text on it. You just see that little symbol that has the scissors. So again, depending on how your machine has been set up, you may see a little bit different look. So yep, that is an applique design that is already built in. So I'm going to set that one. And I'm going to use the 5x7 hoop. Well, as it is oriented, how it comes on the machine, it won't fit there. but I see it is less than 7 inches, so I can rotate this design. I'm going to rotate the other way, and then I can fit it onto the 5x7 hoop that I already have hoop my material. So on this one, I'm gonna just go to, I will go to embroidery, and if I wanted to do the traditional embroidery method, I would sew my placement line, and then after that one, then I will do the embroidery, and then put a piece of fabric on top of it. It will tack it down, and then we would do a little satin stitching or decorative stitches, I guess blanket stitch on this days, and then the rest of the design. Well, that will be the trimming hoop method. Well, I want to use this one as a scan and cut version when I pre-cut the applique shape. So I need to save this one into a USB stick. So I will touch the memory, and then I have plugged the USB stick on my top slot, so I will touch that one, and now the design is saved. So now I'm gonna go and take the memory stick out of the machine, put it on my scan and cut, and then I will cut this applique shape out. I'm in my scan and cut machine, and I have plugged in that memory stick that I had saved the embroidery design. So I will go to retrieve data and the USB symbol. And whenever the machine saved the design, it saved it into a P pocket. If your memory stick did not have one of these P pocket folders already, the first time you want to save onto that stick, that little folder is created. If there already is one, all the designs will be then saved onto that P pocket. My memory stick, it had all kinds of other stuff in it, but it did not have any, I didn't have a P pocket at the moment, so that it was created. And when I touch it, there is that one design that was saved. And it is saved as a PHX format. Lots of times you kind of get a question is that, well, how come my machine reads PES files, and when I take one out of the machine, it's no longer PES? Well, the PHX is the Solaris and Luminaire format that when the machine saves a design from the machine into a stick, it makes it onto this machine's internal format. But then if you have an older or any other of the Brother and Baby Lock machines, if you save it from the machine to a memory stick, they will save it as a PHC. The scan and cut machine, like this newer scan and cut machines, they can read PHX, PHC, and also PES files. So if I had an embroidery design that I had used embroidery software, the Brother and Baby Lock embroidery software, and saved that design with that applique position in that little CISO file, then it will also read the PES file on that way too. But then if you have an older scan and cut, anything the original 550 or the scan and cut 2, those ones I will also read the PHC and PES, but not this PHX format. That is only on the newer ones. That's kind of for the Luminaire and the Solaris, they will work with this one. So whenever I brought this design, and it gives a funny name, and we can't change it in the machine. Of course, if I don't like to keep that name, I can take the memory stick in a computer and rename it. Just leave the extension. Well, and on this case, I get two options. I will have an option where it will give me the capability to take each of these color steps, or I can just to take the embroidery applique piece of it. So I'm gonna touch the shield this time, because my machine had already had this design so that it had that little scissor file. I keep calling it a scissor file because it has the indication of a scissors. So when I touch that little shield pattern, that's the only part that will read from this design. If I go back and if I touch this little flower pattern, it'll just give me option even resizing it. But this time I have multiple options. I could also just to read kind of the outline on this embroidery file. I could read each of those stitches. So I could put the pen and draw this one. I'll show some of these features later, because this time I want to only just to use the basic one when I already have a design that has that scissor file. Then all I have to do is touch the shield, and that is the file gets created. And it shows me the size. I can put multiples out in this one. If I want to make multiple appliques, I can cut them all at one time. But then the way the embroidery machine, when we do applique in a hoop, the trimming hoop method is that we will sew a placement line, place a piece of fabric on top of it, and tack it down. and then we trim the excess. Well, we can't ever trim it right exactly where the stitches are. There's a little margin around it. So when the satin stitches that are often used to cover the raw edges, they will then cover the the tack down line and then also the raw edge. Well, the machine, the scan and cut, will cut exactly on that stitching line. So they don't have that little extra piece of fabric sticking out of it that would be left when we manually trim it. So in that case, especially if your embroidery design has a very narrow satin stitch, it may not cover that one entirely. So in that case, you need to increase the size of this applique piece a little bit. Well, we can't increase on this one. However, we have a pattern to add a little extra margin around it. They are called the outline distance. So anytime I touch it is 1 millimeter. Most times that's all I would need. It's just the one, because if you put too much, then your fabric is going to stick outside the covering stitches. So most times I would put maybe 1 notch on it just to have a little bit extra margin around it. But this design happens to be more an applique, blanket stitch applique design. So I don't really want to have that extra piece this time. I'm going to leave it 0. Again, depending on the design, depends how we do it. And then I will set it. And it will put it on the top corner. And I had already scanned my mat on this one because for the recording I had to put my camera fairly close, and then I couldn't really scan it easily without moving the machine. So I have a little scrap of fabric that I have packed with the Pellon Easy Steam. It's a little kind of fusible web, but it is great for embroidery applique because it has a little tackiness. So I'll show you in the machine when I go what I mean, why I like that one for embroidery applique pieces. So my build piece of fabric, I can then position it exactly, and if I want to zoom in. So that's the cool thing in this one, is that I can fussy cut it if I have a pattern that I want to have on this flower, or if I want to save my fabric piece entirely. So that way I can cut multiple pieces or something else of this one too. So now I'm going to go OK and OK there. And one more time OK. And we're going to go ahead and cut it. Well, now the question often is, what kind of blade should I use? I'm cutting fabric, but it is packed with paper. Well, in that case, I'm going to use the standard paper blade. If it's plain fabric, if I don't have that paper back fusible on it, because I have still the paper behind it. If you have some of the other products that use the fusible and peel the paper out, then you won't want to use the tan blade, the fabric blade. But now I'm cutting paper with the fabric, so I'm going to use the standard blade. And then for my settings, I need to make sure that my half cut is turned off, because I want to cut through all layers. And I could do a little test pattern, which I normally do, especially if I haven't used my machine a lot of different fabrics. I would do that one. I'm going to, on this demo, just go and hit the start button. And it will detect the thickness of the material, and it will be cut in my little piece shortly. This is a very small flower, so it won't take too long. Here we go, it's finished cutting. So I'm gonna go and take this cut out fabric. Believe it or not, it has been cut there. And I will then take this one into the machine and show how we go for the next step. Okay, I'm at my machine, so I have hooked the white fabric, and I put black thread in the machine so it will show it a little bit better. So I will embroider the first color, which in this case is the placement line for this applique piece. And I had just taking it off the mat. I still have the paper behind it. On this design, the second color is going to be doing that kind of the leaves on it. So I'm going to have that one stitched out. And then after that one will be then when we put the fabric. Okay, now it's finished the second color. On my machine now, the next, or this design, the next color would be then to put a piece of fabric and tack it down. So I have my piece of fabric, this time pre-cut. And just to make it easy to get this paper backing out, if I put the, and use the pin to score that, it will score the surface, and then I can peel it out. The reason I like to use this Pellon product is it is tacky. The other really cool product is Floriani Applique Wonder. Of course, there are multiple other brands that make it too, but those are the two that we sell a lot in the shop and some of my favorites. So now I have pre-cut this one, so I need to place it on my placement line. And that's it. That's why I like this one, because it is tacky. And it's still very positionable. If I didn't get it right spot, I can still take it out and adjust. If you use ordinary paperback fusible web, you may want to then use a glue stick or take this hoop onto an ironing board, use a little mini iron to press this one down so that it doesn't move when you start stitching. Just to kind of reminder, do not put your iron on top of it when you have it in a machine. Never ever we want to iron when the hoop is in a machine. You need to take it in an ironing board. So let me put this back. So now that I have already pre-cut this one, I could really skip the next color, because that is the tack down line that we would normally tack the bigger piece. And some designs, it might be helpful to do that if you have a satin stitch finish on it, because that will kind of cover just the outside, the edges, to tack it down first with the straight stitch, and then it will do others. Well, mine, because this was a blanket stitch finish, I'm maybe gonna skip that, because I don't want to have another straight stitching going around it. So on my machine, I will touch the needle minus plus button and go to the next color. That is the finishing part of it, and it will be, this case, a blanket stitch. So I will just put the pressure foot down and start stitching. And this specific color has one more step, and they tell to use the white thread on this time. I'm just gonna leave the black one, and it's gonna do just a little decorative stitches on top of this applique piece. But I just like the way how neatly it now made my design. That blanket stitch went right around that design, and because I have used that the fusible webbing with the Pellon product on it, if I now put an iron on top of it, it will permanently fuse it down, so this will be secure for laundry as well. Oh, that is a very pretty design. So now it says it's finished embroidery, and here it is. I think it came out really beautifully. And if I put a close up, so I could even take my little scissors and trim off those little pieces of frayed fabric, because this fabric wasn't batik. If it's batik, you most likely wouldn't even see those little frayed pieces, but I think it came out beautiful. What do I do if my design didn't have that built-in scissor file, and if I don't have the Brother or Baby Lock software to add that one? Maybe I have an Anita Q design or Kim Pepel, one of those embroidery designs. Well, I can still do the same thing. In that case, I will just go to my embroidery, and then I have saved that some designs on my my memory stick, and some of the ones, let me get it from this folder. Let me just open up. I just put a few different kinds of embroidery applique designs on these ones. And see, some of these ones are PHC files, and then some of the ones I have as PES files. Well, there is a pattern which is from one of the Anita Q Design embroidery collections that has the different states, and that is from Florida, of course. So if I pick this design, and it's a PS design, and it's kind of, we can't have Florida up sideways. Let's rotate it in the right direction. Looks more like a state now. So this one obviously was an applique design. If I kind of close this one. So we have on this one, first a placement line. Then we have the tack down line. Then we have a satin stitching around it. And finally a little star for Tallahassee. Well, if I put this design now on my scan and cut machine, how do I then separate that this is the file that I want to then have my cut file? Well, actually on this one I could use either one. I could use this one or that because they really are the same one. But if I have an older scan and cut, I would not be able to see anything out of the embroidery file because it doesn't have that scissor file. But if I have the SDX machine, I could touch that little flower button and then select this piece of the design for my cutting. But any scan and cut, even the older ones, what I can do on those ones is, if I tell this the first color on this one to be that little scissor file, and let me just actually close this, I go back because I just touched the color and it took me on that way I changed colors. Most machines you may have to go on the editing or somewhere where it has to spool a color that I can change the colors accordingly. So this one brings me the color palette. And towards the end of the color palette, when I'm using the Brother Embroidery colors, again, you need to make sure you have the Brother Embroidery colors selected. So in that case, you'll see that there is those three items, the little applique material, applique position, and applique the final stitching. So if I tell on that first color that it is this applique material color, so see, now it changed it into a little scissor file. And I could change these others to be then applique position and the satin stitch. Really, those don't matter what they are because machine is color blind, so you'll put whatever thread you want to put on those ones. Important was this first one. So now when I save this design into my memory stick, and then I can take this design into my scan and cut. So I will show on the scan and cut to see how it reads this one. I'm on my scan and cut machine and I have plugged in the memory stick where I saved the design from the machine. So I'm gonna go to retrieve data and the memory stick. If I go onto that with the original file, I'll go first on that one. And it recognizes all the PHC, PES and PEX files that I have saved. So I have a few different ones I had saved on this one. So here's the one that I used in a machine. And yes, it is sideways. But in this case, if I touch this shield, it tells me that this pattern does not contain any cutting line data for applique. Because it does not read that one, because I had the design how it came from the Anita Q Design CD, it didn't have that scissor file built in because they do them for all different brands, so they don't have that one set up. So if I take the design, let me go back, that's the house key, and if I go back on this one and get the design that I saved from the machine after I assigned that applique material, so it's saved in a P pocket, and here's that file. So when I touch the shield button, it will read that the applique material shape, and I can add the little margin. In this case, I may want to put that 1 millimeter so that it will definitely get covered with the satin stitch. And when I set it, now it will be ready to cut from the applique material and ready for embroidery. We go back. But then if I touch on the newer scan and cut the SDX machines, if I touch the flower button, then yes, I could resize it also. But if I'm using for applique, I better not resize it in this time. So I'm gonna touch OK. And as a default, I get 3 modes. I could use this one. And what would I get on this? It will detect the outline on all the areas inside and outside. Well, this really wouldn't be a good one for my applique piece because none of these ones are the lines I want. The one I really wanted is the straight stitch line that is kind of between those ones. So for the applique material cutting, that wouldn't be the best option. The next one, this one is the total outline. So if I select that one, and again I could resize it too. This one, it just goes around this design. Well, that again wasn't really the best selection for this case because it's too big. If I cut my applique piece with this one and do the satin stitching around it, that raw edge will probably stick out. Okay, I have to go to, that's just the home page to get back onto that one because I only set that on my page. So let me go back, get that same design one more time. And then the flower, and then I leave the size as it is. Well, the very last option on this one is stitches. It even shows little zigzag. So that is the stitch file. So if I select that one, again, this case I could now change the number of pieces I want to cut out. And then there's a grouping button, a group and ungroup button. If I don't do the ungroup on this one, I still can do it later on the edit screen. I have two options. I can already ungroup it on this one, or I can ungroup it later. And then we have all of these ones, we have a little extra button is about smoothing. Because this one is a stitch file. So it literally goes around the stitches, and the edges may not be very, very smooth. There may be a little bit jaggedy lines. So I can adjust on this one to have the smoothing totally off. The default is low. I can add a little bit more smoothing if I wanted to have on this, which is a good idea when you cut fabric, is to have a little bit more smoothing on it so that this won't try to go around every stitch. So I'm just going to leave it in the middle at the moment, and I touch set. So in this case, this is now all the stitch patterns, and I had ungrouped it. So let me, instead of selecting screen, I'm going to go on edit, and I'm going to use the selection button. If I was just going to ungroup there, going to touch away. So there's that little star. And if I zoom in a little bit, there's that star. It just went around on that design and even filled it in. So if I wanted to cut this one out, I could do that one too. Or I could even draw it too. So then if I go on the next part, so if I move some of these pieces out. So that is a piece of the looks like one of those straight stitches that we have there. And let me touch the button. And that one, so this probably was the color number 1. That's the color number 2. And then we have the satin stitch, which is a color number 3. And then finally we had that little star that was the last color number. So what it did, it actually separated each color stop that my embroidery design had. So in this case, I could use either one of these bottom ones, because in this case they happen to be exactly the same. That is the straight stitch that will be doing the tack down and the placement line for the embroidery. So I could use either one of these ones for cutting my design. I would definitely don't want to use this one for cutting line, because that one is the satin stitching. And in this case, I could use this for drawing. I'll show a little sample later that I did with that original design that I had embroidered. I made a little card out of it too, and I used a drawing function. So I would delete that one. I would delete that one. And then one of these ones. Really didn't matter in this case what it is, depending a little bit how the design was done. Sometimes the placement line and the tack down might be a little bit different. On this cases, they happen to be exactly the same. So now I could use this for cut line, but this will be the stitching line. So again, if I trim it manually, I wouldn't be really cutting it right on the stitches. It will be right beside the stitches. So this time I may want to add a little margin. So I'll go to edit, and we have the same margin button, this outline offset, and the default has a little bit on it. It's a little bit too much in my case. So I would go, I maybe just to go in there to have it just at 1 millimeter. So 0.04 inches, just a little bit wider. And then if I now set it okay, and then I would be ready to, one more time, okay. I would be ready to then cut this piece. Just put my applique fabric, cut that one, and then I can embroider the design. So that is one thing that I could use from this existing file without taking it in the machine and using the applique material color setting in the machine or embroidery software. Well, let me show there's some more in this one. Gonna go one more time and get that original design. Because then under this little flower button, that was the default that I went through. But there's one more button there. That's the color recognition mode. So when I select this one, it now goes around and just kind of picks up the major colors on this design. So in this case, I really just had those two because these last two are the same we had in the previous page. But this one, I would kind of select everything I see in green, and then that is the little star. Let me pick up that one. So this one is just the two outlines, one inside the satin stitches and one outside the satin stitches. What could I use this one? Well, if I wanted to cut this one out of sign vinyl or just to kind of just get the outline, that will be giving me those two cut lines. And the same way if I want to add a little star. So I could create this one, not just an embroidery file, but I could cut this one out of vinyl and or even paper, and then glue those outlines and on those pieces, and that will become just a paper crafting design. Well, this was the original embroidery design that I showed earlier when I embroidered this one. What I did then afterwards, I took that same design, I resized it a little bit, and then I draw this one with the pen. So instead of cutting it out, I use that last option on that default settings when I can get all those stitching lines. I pick that one and just to put the black pen on my scan and cut machine and draw this all the colors. So this one was my first trial, so I draw every single color, which again I could maybe have done a bit different. So anyway, next piece what I did, I took that same design. Again, I resized it to be 5 inches on the widest area. And then I deleted some of the color steps. Because on this one, I draw every single color step. Which, of course, in this case, it was the placement line for our applique piece. Then it was this leaf area. And then it had another tack down stitch. Then it had the blanket stitches, and then finally the decorative stitches. So it's sewed, I keep saying sewed now. It draw all of these sections exactly how the embroidery machine was going to be embroidered. Well, after I just done this one, I thought, well, I don't really need all these ones. So in this case, I only just to draw the placement line for the flower. And then I draw the next color. I deleted all the other color stops. And then on after it is drawn on a piece of cardstock, I then took that same design and I only took that section that was for the cut the first placement line. I took that one, cut out of the same fabric that I had before, because it has a sticky background, so I peeled it out and stuck onto the card. So that way I can make a card to match if I make a gift. And then I thought, well, I'm gonna do a wild try, and maybe not the best idea of mine, but again, this is I play the things, and sometimes they are successful, sometimes not so. It just kind of looked plain, because with the embroidery we have these blanket stitches. So I thought, could I just draw those blanket stitches? Of course, yep, it did draw them. The only problem is that, of course, it was going over that raw edge of the fabric, so it sometimes kind of pulled a little bit. You see some places a little bit on that blanket stitch drawn on it. If it was right in the middle on some design, I could maybe have been more successful, but catching the edge on that pen wasn't maybe the best idea. But anyway, so I just want to show that I can take the same design and I can just use the pen to draw it, because I definitely wouldn't want to cut those ones with the scan and cut. That would be the blade going really crazy on trying to cut all those pieces.
I'm going to just show a couple pictures that I had taken when I created a card that Beth used in the Facebook Live in towards end of April. So on if you want to go back on the video on the Facebook, you'll see the card that she shows. So on that one, I had taken the embroidery design, the cake design, and then I had first embroidered that one for the white fabric. And then I took the same design to the scan and cut machine, resized it a little bit smaller to make a card to match the embroidery. So for the card, what I did for the applique part, which on the embroidery side, I would have cut it out from the fabric. I cut those pieces of just cardstock, pretty papers. And then for the part that the machine would be stitching, the thread part, like the satin stitches and the things around the flame and or the candle and things, these pieces I cut out of vinyl because then I was able to put the cardstock pieces in a card and then put these vinyl pieces on top of it to cover the edges, kind of looking like it was satin stitches. So these were just the scraps that I had put on a mat, scanned the background, and if I zoom in a little bit, I know it's hard to see in the camera, but may see that little faint cut line around this the cake part that I had cut. There's that little candle on the top, and there's some of those little cherries that there were, and then the icing in the cake. So I cut these ones all out of vinyl, and then what I did was I took just a cardstock, and I used the drawing function to draw the cake base and then the cake. I just had put the normal pen on my machine on the scan and cut, and then I draw that one because that came your placement line to put these pieces on a cardstock. And that was just the image showing that how I positioned it. And here's the weeded part, all the pieces that I had. So I had my cardstock that I had drawn the outline, and then I had my pieces that I had cut out over just the pretty papers. So I just I didn't even glue them. I just placed them on those outlines, and then I had weeded all these different sections, and I used the transfer paper to get all the pieces on this one. One thing that I did notice when I did this one that I should have added a little bit of a more outline on these ones. I did not do any extra outline. I should have added a bit more, so then they would have been better covered with this satin stitches, which is in this case vinyl. But that was just my kind of a first trial. So on the distance, it looks still okay. So here's something that I was transferring that base part for the cake stand. So it looks like I satin stitches, but it is just vinyl, and that vinyl covers that edge of the paper, and then it looks like it was matching with the embroidery part. And here's the next section. Again, the transfer sheet will really help to line things up. That was a little, I guess, the icing part of it. And then I did the cherries and all the rest of the pieces. And unfortunately, I don't have a copy of that one. There was some other things I was playing with. But if you go on the Facebook page, you can see the card that Betty is showing on that Lightboard demo.
Well, what about the older scan and cut? I have this one of the original 550 models. So on this one, I have plugged the same memory stick. I will touch the pattern. And then I'll go to the save data and touch my memory stick. So in this case, if I touch my P pocket, I don't see anything because the older scan and cuts, the 550 and 650, those ones do not read the PHX files that my Luminaire saved. But if I have some of the other models, and I will show if I save this same design on my multi-needle, which says it as a PHC file, how that works. But PHX, that's the only one that this won't read. But if I go on this one for my Applique demo folder that I put some Applique files, it actually reads just those files that I already have that cut file included. Some of these ones are PHCs, some of the one is a PES file. Let me take the PES. So it looks like it's an embroidery design. But if I touch OK, it will read only that little scissor file, that Applique material file. In this case, there are two. There's a flower, and then there's the center. So I will just go and get that one. In this case, again, I can make more of it. And then if I want to resize it, I would have to go then on my edit button and then touch the resize button on this one. I would maybe make it just a one notch, just a little bit bigger, so that will then get covered. And then if I want to add the other one, let's add, get the second part, and OK. And I would do the same thing. So yes, I can take a PES file or PHC file for all the scan and cut the same way, as long as I have that little scissor file set up. So let me show also just to take that, let me just do house key in there. I'll take one of those PHC files from this one too. So here we go. Now that little cute little duck. Again, it looks like an embroidery design, but that is the cut file part of it. So yep, that will work with all the machines too. And the SDX will read all of these ones. I'm on my multi-needle machine. And this is very similar than the Brother Dream machine or the Baby Lock Destiny or several other machines. So lots of features are exactly the same. It's just the hoop orientation is a little bit different. So on this one, I have plugged the same memory stick as I was using in my Luminaire and the Scan and Cut machines. So I will go and read that stick. So I'm gonna get that same design that I used here, this. And I set that one. Again, I just had to rotate it to be right way around. So this one, if I touch the little color palette, it also shows that these ones are just color files. They're not specific applique files. So again, if I had told this one, there's to be the applique material, and on this place, I can then touch memory and save that into the memory stick. It will save it onto a P pocket, exactly the same way as my Luminaire did. But this time it saves it as a PHC file. So this one I can use it on any of the Scan and Cut machines. So I'm going to show this one on the older Scan and Cut. Okay, I'm in here on the original Scan and Cut machine, and I have plugged now this memory stick that I had saved the design on my multi-needle. Go to Pattern, Save Data, and the memory stick. So yeah, it's if I take the applique, the design, this one, it won't show that one because it doesn't have the file. But if I go there and on the P pocket, here's my file, and that's okay. And only thing it detects is that cut file for this applique piece. In the beginning of this presentation, it feels like a long time ago now, I mentioned that I'm gonna show something else in here. And this very first design, it kind of every time when I opened the designs that I built in a machine, kind of intrigued me that what is this design? Well, that pattern guide that I showed in the very, very beginning, it showed some pictures that how this was used. It is a three-dimensional flower, and the way it works is that if I set this one up, the very first color on this one, and it is that scissor file, the cut file. It is the piece that will give you all the flower petals. So this one, it was designed to be cut first from a piece of felt. And I guess the way they designed was this one, that you would hook the piece of felt, embroider this design, and then use scissors to cut it. Because this one has little marks, this kind of little, let me actually zoom in a little bit on this one. So this has those little marks. Well, eventually those marks are then used whenever we embroider the rest of the design. So I kept looking at this design and I thought, what is it gonna make? So one day I decided to sew it out, but I didn't wanna do all this manual cutting because I have a Scan and Cut machine. So what I did on this case, I took this design and I sent it to my computer. And then in a computer, I used the Brother PE11 software because the PE11 software can read the PHX files also. I took that one in the software and I edited it a little bit because the problem is that if I take this file to my into my Scan and Cut, well, first thing it will tell me that it won't fit onto my mat. You would need to use the 12 by 24 mat if you wanted to cut it. But the other reason why I didn't want to really use it as it came out was that it has all these little other stitching lines too. Well, these stitching lines would be interpreted as a cut file. Well, I didn't really want to have little pieces cut. And on the other hand, really didn't want to have a hole cut in the middle of the flower. So in this case, instead of me just saving this one into the memory stick, taking the memory stick in a Scan and Cut and cut this one, I took it into the software and I edited it a little bit. I'm gonna show how I did that one. But first, let me save this design. So that's memory. And instead of me touching now the memory stick, on my machine, I'm gonna go for the wireless. So what happened on this case, let me just close this one. If I go on that, it saved it onto my wireless folder. So I have some other things in on this one too, but it saved it on the wireless folder as a PHX file. So now I can wirelessly take this design on my computer, take it in a software and edit it. This is how it turns out whenever I sort it out. I made it into a little crazy patch below. I made another video, it's going to be one of those Technique Tuesday videos in the YouTube, where I show how I create that crazy patch background. But in this case, I just then, instead of leaving the crazy patch as it was, I covered it with the flower design. But these ones are all individual petals. And the embroidery design, after I cut them out, it will show different placement lines. You will just put them in the order, like that design guide shows you the steps by step how to do that one. I think it came out really pretty. Okay, I'm in my computer, and I started my Brother PE Design 11 software. And when it starts up, I have the wizard starting. Of course, you can't click this one and then it wouldn't bring this up. I can always get back onto by touching this little button there on the screen too. But I kind of like it to come up because this is a place that I can select my hoop size that I want to use. Because I had been last time using this one with my multi-needle machine. So I'm going to select the sewing machine. And this design, it is a large design. So I need to make sure that I select the largest hoop, which is the Luminous 272 by 408 millimeters. And I'm going to rotate the hoop over the display because that gives me just a little bit more space to work on. And then as a fabric, well, I'm going to leave it as a default, the fabric size, because I'm not going to be converting this into embroidery files. So the fabric doesn't matter. I'm using it as a cut file. So this time now I'm going to go and read this design from my machine. So my Luminaire is still turned on, and I had put that file onto the wireless folder. So if I haven't used this software for a little while, and we had recent little power failure, and also the first time when you use it, but sometimes occasionally you may have to also do this one to kind of have them connected back together. On the top right corner, there's a button that says Option. So if I click this one, and then Options. One of the ones on this one, that's how you can customize the workspace and do all your settings. But last one on there is the network machine settings. And it reads that, yes, there is a network machine available. So I'm going to select that one. Yeah, my machine still says sewing machine. I haven't given it the name yet. And then I will click OK. So now I know that I'm connected for my machine. And then if I click on the import button, the defaults on this one, the last time I used it, it shows the design library. I can read designs from different places. I can, there's lots of folders that came with the software. If I just want to read something from my computer memory or memory stick, I could use the folder button. Or even if I have a design cards, I could put a card reader, plug that one in and read cards too. But I have at the moment, I have going to use the network machine. I have only one network machine, that's my Luminaire. And those are all the files that I have on that wireless folder on my machine. So I will click this one and import. So it will brought the entire design. And because I rotated my hoop, I better rotate my embroidery design too. So it will kind of look better. I just rotated everything so that I have a bigger workspace. I can use the entire rectangular workspace for this one. Well, it comes as a group, and I really only want to work on that first color. That's the one I want to modify and take that one into scan and cut. So the first thing, how I can separate it, because if I select on this sequence view or the sewing order view, if I right mouse click, say select object, it selects everything. It just comes as a group, and there's no ungroup button. But it opened me another, when I selected that way, it opened me a stitches view. And one of the ones there is divide by color. That's what I want to use. I'm going to divide it by color. So now if I click off this one, and if I select this one, I click it and select object. I have only selected that one item, and then I can hit the delete key and it's gone. So I will just go and select that one, hold down my shift key and select all of these others except the very first one and hit the delete key. Oops, sorry, I had to select the objects first and then hit the delete key. So now all I have left is this section that I want to work with. Well, this one, because the color is kind of a faint orange, that is the applique material color that they use. So if I let me select this one, and if I touch the color button, it says that it is applique material. I can select the thread chart and pick up the Brother Embroidery, not got a brown, but Brother Embroidery. If I can get the right one, click, there we go. And then I'm gonna just pick up the black, this one, just to show on the display that it's easier to see. What I didn't want was all these little extra pieces. I don't want my machine to cut these ones. If I zoom in a little bit, they are numbers. They just help on the design when you embroider the design, the little placement lines. But you can use the pictures on that embroidery design guide. It will show exactly where those pieces go. So I just didn't want to have my scan and cut to cut this. But more importantly, I did not want my scan and cut to cut this circle. So in this case, what I did was I'm going to just to select some of these pieces and delete. So let me zoom back in. I'm going to do that circle area first. On my selection key, I have a little down arrow, and we have different things. I can just to select the entire object. I can select, we have to put in here, I have select points, or I can just select the entry and exit points. Well, I want to use this select point one. And that way, when I'm clicking this one, I get every single stitch selected. And if I put a box around there, anything that is highlighted now is selected, I can hit the delete key. And there's a little bit more I can delete there too. So I just went around on my design, pick up all these pieces that I don't want to. Oh, I didn't want that. If you get one extra, just hold down the control key and unselect that one. If I get too many, there we go. No, just did not want to work for me today. Because these are all individual stitches, so sometimes they are just even those tie-on stitches, so you see multiple ones on some places. Let's see, I think I caught pretty much all of the, oh, there's still one. So this is where you can edit any embroidery design. I can edit them stitch by stitch, and of course I can do all kinds of things with this. It's a full digitizing software. Well, now that I have all of these ones, let me put everything back on a display, and then we select your normal selection key. So now these are all pieces, but there's still a connecting lines on these, which really wouldn't matter. I could cut these ones. So I have a couple options now. I could save this one as a embroidery file. Of course, one thing I would first want to do is to change the color back to that scissor file. Well, this time doesn't matter what color palette I really have selected, because I always have these three buttons in the bottom: the applique material, the position, and the applique. So if I have them all selected and I touch the applique material, so now the color has been selected for that. So I could save this in the memory stick and then take that one into my scan and cut machine to cut it. But I also, if I have the Brother P11 software, I can send directly that one even wirelessly to my scan and cut. So Brother P11, we have a button on the top that says scan and cut. That's the only difference between the Baby Lock palette and the Brother P11 is that we have the scan and cut button directly. So this case, if I click export, it says this pattern cannot be exported to an FCM file because it's too big. Well, this one is larger than 12 inches. My standard machine mat is only 12 by 12. This one is longer. So this would not fit in the mat. So I said, I'm going to do that one. Of course, we could put the 12 by 24 mat in the machine, but for me to save it this way, I didn't have that option. So what I need to do is, I know these pieces will fit on the 12 by 12 mat if I rearrange them a little bit, because this one is not as tall as it is wide. But these are all currently connected together because we still have those little connecting lines. So let me go and put the color back to black so you can see. So if I can't move them, so we need to separate this next. So I will go back on that home tab on that one. And I will select this little point selection again. And then I can zoom in. So on this case, I will pick up some of these points. I highlight there and I just look split at point. I could even delete some of these points if I did not want to have these ones. And on my actual file, I did delete these pieces too. But that is kind of a little extra thing that it will be just cutting these pieces out of the felt. It's going to be part of the scrap anyway. So I would need to go all of these ones that are connected. I will just right mouse click and do a split at point. That way I can have them separated. Okay, let's see. I can see still there's a whole group there that I need to go and separate. There it is. So I can look on that the sewing order section that which parts are still connected together. So I can see that there's still some connected together. I think I need to go further that way. Something to do with that big flower. There we have. That's my last piece. So now every piece that I have has been now separated. So if I select my normal selection tool and then I will zoom out. So now I can move these ones around on my display. But my hoop size or my workspace in this one was that largest hoop for luminaire. Well, I need to have the cutting mat size. So I will go on that design settings button, which was the Willy the Wizard that came up earlier, because I can set on this one also a custom size. And I had, because I had used it last time, 300 by 300 millimeters, which is the 12 by 12 mat. I will just select that one. And what this would allow me to now do is to split this design onto multiple pieces. So that's really what this allows. So that's why I get all these little crits. It's assumed that I would gonna be splitting that into the 4x4 hoop. So if I put some little bigger section on here, bigger hoop size, then I don't have all those red lines. But really, we don't need to worry about those that one, because we're not gonna split this in a hoop. We just want to fit everything on this area. So now I can move each piece on the right spot. And this case, I'm going to start with this piece because it's the largest one. And when I did this one for my actual piece, they did fit all. I'll click in here. There we go. So trying to get it right on the line. They did fit all just exactly on the 12 by 12 mat, and then I just cut my felt for that size. So you may have to rearrange these ones a little bit different angles and locations, but they did all fit. And because felt doesn't have any grain lines, so we can rotate things also. They did all fit. Well, I'm not gonna play all this time, just gonna pour in to watch me work on this one. But I was able to get them all onto this one. I'm just going to move it enough that they're all inside the hoop. I know I wouldn't cut it this way. So anyway, I would want to make sure they're not overlap. But now this time that they all fitted on this one, then I may want to just select, because if I only have one piece selected, and then I would go on the scan and cut and do the export, I only get that piece. So I'm going to close that one. I'm going to make sure I have everything selected. The box around the entire thing. And then I think I got them all. I think I'm going to then start the export. So Oh, there's one piece somewhere. There's still one is outside area a little bit. So, okay, here we go. So now again, it's like there's a little bit overlap on this one. But I was able to get them all, and then I can save it as an FCM file. Or I could even send it to Scan and Cut Canvas workspace if I was logged into my Scan and Cut Canvas. So that would be just another way I can send it to Canvas workspace. I could edit them all, and then from the Canvas workspace, I can send them wirelessly to my Scan and Cut machine. On my case, what I did, I just saved it in an FCM file and in a memory stick, and then I took that from the Scan and cut those metal pieces out, and then embroidered the design.
Well, here's the actual file that I had used. So I had disconnected all the pieces, and then I had moved them around to fit onto that 12 by 12 mat. So this one, when I just then went on and clicked the Scan and Cut button and then export, and then I was able to save this one as an FCM file and then put that in my machine.